the notion of heroism that we discussed is based on some notion of following the path, as it has been said by Jamgon Kongtrul. It might be easy for you to follow your mind according to the Dharma, but it might be difficult for you to follow your mind with the path. So at the same time, the basic notion of Dharma and the basic notion of involvement in the practice situation is very important. It becomes very necessary in some sense. There is a question about having had to develop some notion of heroism, how we actually evolve further. Furthering evolvement is based on some sense of willing to take new elements into your heart. You could say that I have this social upbringing, I know the etiquette, I know this and that, and how to make polite conversation, make my fool for myself at the same time, and how to be a generous person, how to be a good person, how to be a good driver, and how to be a good person to keep your records with the bank and all the rest of it. But nevertheless, there is something else takes place, which is a notion of how to learn to transplant. That is to say, when we talk about a transplant, we are talking about familiar world and unfamiliar world to join together. From that point of view, we could talk about Buddhism as being unfamiliar world. Cold heart. And we could talk about our ordinary samsaric world as being hot body, heated with all kinds of jealous and confusion, aggression, demands of all kinds taking place. We are heated up so much. We heat, and heat of all kinds of notions that we have so tensed up all the time. That we are completely heated up. That our heart and mind, intellect, everything has so much opinion. And those opinions begin to create eruption constantly, like a mountain erupting, volcanic fire constantly. You'll be so heated up all the time in passion and aggression and immense ignorance, which we take pride in them. So much of heat is there. At the moment when we begin to take pride in opening our mind towards the big path of the Mahayanists, that somehow the heat is slightly cooled, but not completely so, because we have no idea what's happening actually per se. This heat, intense heat body, mind, intellect, needs something cool, something cooling, need to be replaced, transplanted. Is cold heart, which sounds quite deadly, but actually it's very exciting. That cold heart is what's known as bodhichitta. Bodhichitta meaning body, meaning awakening, enlightenment, chitta meaning heart, so heart of enlightenment. For the heat of our speed and aggression and everything. When that particular heart is transplanted into our system and our body, literally, we begin to cool down a little bit. We begin to feel slightly lukewarm, which is rather depressing at that point, at the beginning. Lukewarm, not so good. And the conflict of some kind. But nevertheless, beyond that, the whole thing becomes much more real and personal. There's such hotness of this temperature that we have in our basic existence. That something is transplanted in such history of coolness, utter coolness, that it is not so much of the ice that made out in the refrigerator. The ice that inherited from the North Pole through centuries and centuries and centuries, that you plant this old age ice is transplanted in your hot, tense body. And there's obviously some kind of sizzling that takes place. The temperature of the birth is not very comfortable, and some kind of threat, obviously. Nevertheless, a sense of heat becomes a surrounding process. The bodhichitta of the cool, bodhichitta, cool, cold, utterly cold, awakened state of mind, begin to transplant in your heart, which is not particularly coming from outside the world, outsiders, such as outsiders, but it is something that you deserve if you feel so hot, thirsty. You deserve cold drink. That is a cosmic cold drink that we're getting. And we don't actually have to drink, but it actually can transplant in our heart. And so our thirst could be quenched on the spot, on the right spot. Interestingly, such cold becomes a real if you could analyze this cooling system called bodhichitta that consists of a sense of sympathy and sense of space at the same time. So it's not deadly cold. The analogies we could use quite simply, if you have water in our glass, put a piece of ice in it, it floats. And the reason why it floats rather than it stands on the down is because it's full of space in it. At the same time it's cold. So the notion with that is the idea of cool and the coldness of enlightened attitude contains the notion of compassion, which is the icy quality. At the same time, notion of wakefulness, which is lots of space in it. That's why ice float in this form, from this point of view. So we have the notion of iciness, notion of space at the same time. In our hot water tap, if you put a hot water tap and pull lots of ice blockers in it. It floats, completely floats. It has the coldness and also spaciousness in it. Space in it already. That's precisely bodhicitta. Bodhicitta contains a notion of heroism and depth and openness. At the same time, it contains gentleness and its demarcation at the same time, which makes the ice don't just jump up in the water. What stays in the water is because of its demarcation, it's because of its willingness to do it. But at the same time, it floats up. So let us know that there is ice in your glass at the same time. The whole thing couldn't exist without the atmosphere, without some kind of gravitation. We can't drink ice water in the mid-air, in outer space, because ice will float here, the water will floating there. And you have no relationships at all. It's useless to have a glass. Your glass will be empty, and the water will be floating. So the reason why we have earth here, an actual, some sense, taking place, that the ice could be put in the glass as well as the water could be put in the glass on this earth is because that there is some sense of a subtle and a fundamental neurosis that is taking place, which we don't have to regard as a problem, but in this case is a promises at the same time. And with the glass of neurosis, of egocenteredness, you pour water of demand, which is the water of demand, which is I want to exist, but then you put ice of body in it. We might call it transplanting in some sense, which is actually true, but we are not particularly talking about having a large operation, particularly a bigger project, as transplanting, which means tearing land and digging up some useful little plant and just plopping them into it and everything, but we're not talking about that. But we are talking about general transplanting, like putting ice in a glass of water. And when that begins to happen, the notion of heroism is the atmosphere. There's some kind of celebration takes place when you have some sense of putting a glass full of water with ice on it. And usually if you're too depressed, you just take a glass from your faucet, from your tap, and just drink it up and couldn't care less if you have ice in it or not. But now that you have glass ready, water ready, ice ready, and you take that with a certain attitude that having done so, that you're going to be thirsty, you quench properly and fully, which is heroism. That takes place in bodhisattva activity, and larger vision and celebration at the same time.